My name is Tori Ingram. I was 32 years old when my family found out the truth about where I had been for the past 2 years. I remember standing in my mother's backyard, surrounded by 60 people I had not seen since I was 26. White tablecloths, string lights, a banner that read, "Happy 25 years." My mother's anniversary party, the one I was never invited to. Her phone started ringing before I even reached the dessert table. Then it rang again. And again. 3 straight days it did not stop. See, for 2 years, my mother told every single person in our family that I was locked in a rehabilitation facility. Aunts mailed letters of sympathy, cousins whispered behind closed doors, neighbors brought casseroles to my mother's porch like somebody had died. But here is what none of them knew. I had never touched drugs in my life, and in 48 hours, every single person at this table was going to find out exactly what I had been doing instead. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This is the channel where ordinary people share extraordinary moments of truth, the kind that change everything. If this is your first time here, drop a comment and hit subscribe. Now let us get into it. To understand my family, you have to understand the math. There were 4 of us in that house. My mother, Diane, her second husband, Glenn, my older brother, Derek, and me. Diane married Glenn when I was 8. Derek was 11. Glenn brought stability, a steady paycheck from the county clerk's office, a mortgage in both their names, and a talent for never disagreeing with my mother about anything. He was the kind of man who nodded at dinner and said, "Your mother knows best," whenever I asked him a direct question. Derek was the star. Always had been. Captain of the baseball team in high school. Voted most likely to succeed, which in our small Georgia town meant he shook hands well and looked good in a tie. My mother kept his trophies on the mantel in the living room, polished them every Sunday. I was the other one. Quiet. Good grades, but the wrong kind of good. Math and computers instead of sports and social clubs. Diane used to say I was too serious for my own good. At dinner, she would spend 20 minutes telling Glenn about Derek's weekend plans, then look at me and say, "And what about you, Tori? Anything new?" But she never waited for the answer. Not once. I learned young that in my family there were people who mattered and people who were present. Derek mattered. I was present. Glenn never corrected her. He would pour himself more iced tea and change the subject to weather or football. In 24 years, I never once heard him say my name without my mother saying it first. But there was one person in my family who saw me. Really saw me. My grandmother, Ruth Kessler, was 5 feet 2 inches tall and carried herself like she owned the room. She had run a small accounting practice out of her garage for 31 years, filed taxes for half the county. Every April, her kitchen table disappeared under stacks of W-2s and receipt envelopes. Ruth was Diane's mother, but the two of them could not have been more different. Where Diane performed for an audience, Ruth worked in silence. Where Diane needed everyone's approval, Ruth needed a sharp pencil and a clean ledger. She started teaching me about money when I was 12. Not in big lectures, in small moments. "Tori, money you earn yourself is money nobody can take from you." She said it while balancing a client's books on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because it was raining and the garage smelled like wet paper and coffee. When I turned 16, she gave me her pocket watch. It was small and brass, the kind you clip to a vest chain. The back was engraved with initials I never learned the story behind. I tried to refuse it. "Grandmother, this is too nice for me." She looked at me over the top of her reading glasses. "Nothing is too nice for you, sweetheart. You remember that?" I clipped it to my backpack strap. Carried it through high school, through college. It stopped keeping accurate time somewhere around my sophomore year, but I never replaced the battery. That was not the point. Ruth mentioned once, about 6 months before she died, that she had taken care of things. She patted my hand and said I should not worry about the future. I assumed she meant life advice, grandmother wisdom. I did not know she meant money. Ruth died on a Tuesday in March. Stroke. She was 74. One moment she was organizing receipts in her garage. The next, a neighbor found her on the floor beside her desk, the phone still in her hand. I was 22, finishing my last semester of computer science at Georgia State. I drove 4 hours to the funeral in a car with a cracked windshield and half a tank of gas. The church was full. Ruth had filed taxes for most of the people in those pews. The pastor said she was a woman of precision and principle. He was right about both. Diane sat in the front row and cried louder than anyone. She held Glenn's arm and shook her head slowly, the way people do when they want you to notice their grief. Derek sat beside her, hand on her shoulder. I sat 2 rows back, turning the pocket watch over in my palm. After the service, Diane pulled me aside in the parking lot. I will handle everything with your grandmother's estate, the paperwork, the accounts. You just focus on finishing school. I nodded. I was grieving. I was exhausted. I trusted her. 3 months later, I graduated with a degree in computer science and a minor in supply chain management. Diane did not come to the ceremony. She said the drive was too long. Derek was busy. Glenn had a work event. I walked across that stage alone, holding my diploma in one hand and Ruth's pocket watch in my pocket. I took a job at a supply chain logistics company in Atlanta 2 weeks later. Entry level. $38,000 a year. I did not know it then. But my mother had already begun spending what was mine. Derek's business lasted 11 months. He opened an online furniture store the year after I graduated. Custom dining tables, reclaimed wood shelving, the kind of thing that looks good on a website but requires actual craftsmanship and inventory management, neither of which Derek had ever demonstrated interest in. Within 6 months, he owed $47,000. Supplier invoices, a warehouse lease he could not break, credit card debt he had hidden from his wife. Diane called Glenn into the kitchen one evening. This I learned later, pieced together from bank records and one honest conversation with Margot. She told Glenn they had to help Derek. He will lose everything. Glenn asked the obvious question. With what money? Diane did not answer right away. She opened a folder on the kitchen counter. Inside was the trust document Ruth had set up 3 years before her death. A simple revocable trust, $40,000, earmarked for me, for education, housing, or a business of my own. Ruth had named Diane as trustee because she trusted her daughter. It was the biggest mistake she ever made. Diane contacted the trust administrator. She filed paperwork claiming a medical emergency for the beneficiary. She signed her name as trustee. $40,000 moved into a checking account, then into Derek's business debts, in less than 72 hours. No one told me. Not Diane, not Glenn, not Derek, who accepted the money the way he accepted everything, as something he was owed. The trust was empty before I ever knew it existed. Ruth's careful planning, her 31 years of filing taxes and saving money, her quiet promise that she had taken care of things, all of it dissolved into Derek's failed furniture website. And I had no idea. 2 years into my job in Atlanta, I started thinking about Ruth's estate. Not because anyone told me to, because I was doing well enough at work to start thinking about buying a small condo, and I remembered Ruth saying she had taken care of things. I called Diane on a Saturday morning. Mom, did grandmother leave any paperwork for me? A savings account, maybe? She mentioned once that she had set something up. There was a pause. The kind of pause that lasts 3 seconds but tells you everything. Your grandmother did not leave anything significant, Tori. She had medical bills. You know how it is. I did know how it was. Ruth had been healthy her entire life until the stroke. She did not have medical bills. She had a garage full of organized filing cabinets and a reputation for paying every invoice within 48 hours. Something did not add up. I spent the next 2 weeks making phone calls I probably should have made years earlier. The county probate office, Ruth's bank, and eventually an estate attorney named David Phelps who charged $150 for a 30-minute consultation. David found the trust in 20 minutes. $40,000. Beneficiary: Victoria Ingram. Trustee: Diane Ingram Holt. Status: fully disbursed. Disbursed for what? I asked. Medical emergency. That is what the paperwork says. I sat in his office for a long time after he said that. I did not cry. I did not shout. I just sat there, holding Ruth's pocket